current issues and career progression if you are interested in joining this field. To our viewers on both Zoom and Facebook platforms, we encourage you to be active in the session by interacting with us in the comment section and posting your questions in the Q&A box. Without further ado, I will pass the session to our moderator for today, Associate Professor Dr. Young, to kick off the session. Over to you, Doctor.
Thank you, Hakim. Good afternoon, everyone. Good to be here. It's a great honor to moderate this event together with Edwin Law here, a very, very busy person, at the same time also very, very famous serial entrepreneur. Imagine with 25 years of experience running all kind of deep business vertical, from F&B, from bank, from fashion, all the way into AI. Wonderful. I think today's session will be quite straightforward. I think we're going to learn a lot from Edwin today. And we'll start from a bit of a presentation from Edwin about his company. And after that, I'm going to ask a little bit more questions, dive in a little bit more about his venture, and also, some of the tips if you want to build, launch, and grow your business. And as what Hakim mentioned early on, if you have any question, just drop by your question into the chat box. And later, I would just, ask the question to our Edwin here. So yeah, Edwin, although Edwin is very busy, he was in Singapore just now, and then he's a super person, and I think a couple of weeks before we met each other in a very unlikely place at Legoland, right? So although we are a serial entrepreneur and we have business to take care, but we also have family, work-life balance are very critical. But of course, today's topic is more focusing on the startup. So yep, Edwin, let's introduce yourself and also your company.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you for the kind and warm introduction, Hakim and Associate Professor Yong. Right, hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us on this rainy, cold Thursday afternoon and spending your time with us. My name is Edwin, and I'm from a company called The Express Train, right? And The Express Train is a venture builder. What does it mean by venture builder? Is we help individuals and businesses to build, launch, and grow your products and ideas. So sometimes you may have heard of a name called incubator, venture builder incubator. All right, so either way, what we do is, we work with promising startups or promising entrepreneurs to help them grow their business. And I think just now, earlier in the introduction, Hakim very nicely used very nice introduction, and you also mentioned a few times, Prof also mentioned a few times about serial entrepreneurship. Yes, I've been in entrepreneurship and founding different companies over a span of 25 years. But I would like to clarify, what serial entrepreneur actually mean. Another way of looking at it is, to some extent, I'm also a serial failure, isn't it, right? The only reason why we keep trying different type of businesses is because some business didn't succeed, we try another one, right? So serial entrepreneurs, if you are MNC. If you're, for example, today, if you're a computer science graduate, you probably can get 2005 or 3000 a month, that kind of thing, right? And then you can slowly climb the corporate ladder. If you're maybe business and banking, you can work in a bank, and within 5 years, you might become a VP. Within 10 years, you might become an SVP of an MNC bank, right? So these are, it's a tough choice because it's two very different routes and two very different paths to take. You want employment and the corporate ladder and climbing up the corporate ladder and achieving that the success at the end of the years of hard work, or do you want to start your own venture and risk failing? Now, either way, both paths has their risks, isn't it? There is no guaranteed success either way. So how do we make this choice easier for all of you all to make? Now, if any of you ever come to this crossroad at any point of your life where you have to choose and you have to make a choice, like for example, should I start a business or should I continue my job, right? One of the examples that I can share with you is a very well-known and very famous example by none other than the world's richest man. Do any of you know what's the name of the world's richest man? Is it Elon now or still Jeff? It keeps changing. Is it Jeff or Elon now? Yeah. So I think it's still Jeff, right? So anyway, one of the top, either number one or number two. I think it's still Jeff by quite a large margin, right? Because Elon just lost a lot of fortune recently also. So yes, one of the amazing true stories, true anecdotes of how Jeff Bezos started Amazon. Way back, I think in the early 1994, 1993. At that point of time, he was getting a very good job in one of the Wall Street firms. And in those days, when you have a good job in a Wall Street firm, at the end of the year, you could be quite secure of getting 12 to 18 months bonus, a very good bonus at the end of the year. Now, he was thinking of starting an e-commerce startup, right? And that was sometime in the middle of the year. And it was a very difficult choice because if you quit your job around June, July, you don't get the bonus at the end of the year, isn't it? Right? And on top of that, he was having a very successful career, very promising career, very good job, very good company. And what made it worse was because when he discussed this with his wife at the point of time, the wife was fully supportive. He said that whatever you do, if you start your business, I will support you. And that made his choice even harder. If the wife said, no, you shouldn't take the risk and all that, then it's quite easy, right, to make that choice. But the wife said, I leave it up to you. So he couldn't decide. So then he decided to discuss it with his boss at that point of time. They took a walk, and you can find this story on YouTube and social media. You can watch a video about him telling it, right? So he took a walk with the boss, and after telling the boss his entire idea, Jeff's boss at the point of time told him that, look, Jeff, that is a very good idea, but I don't think you are the right person to do this. He said, why? No, because you have such a good job and you're going to give up everything to start this business, right? So he was really in a dilemma. He couldn't make a choice. Then one day, he had a kind of an awakening. That means that instead of trying to make a choice between what if, like what are the benefits of this career in Wall Street and what's the benefit of starting your own business, he came up with a framework called regret minimization. It is also a what if, but instead of looking at what if I'm successful or what if I fail, he looked at it as what is the regret that I'm going to make if I take choice A? What is the regret I'm going to have if I take choice B? Now, think about it. If he had chosen to start his business, right? Of course, if he becomes successful, then there's no regret, right? But if he had failed, what would the regret be? If he started Amazon and he failed, what would the regret be? He would say, I quit my job and I could have been very successful, and I started this business for 2 years and then now it failed, right? But then again, what would he have done after he failed, right? He could either maybe learn from the failure and try another startup, or he could use his educational background and his talent and go back to employment, right? Find another job, right? The fact that he could get a good job in Wall Street previously, it probably mean that he was pretty well educated and pretty talented, right? And therefore, he could have applied again and start maybe at a lower position and work his way up again, right? So the regret would then be just, oh well, I lost 2 years in the corporate ladder, but I can climb again. I can start again and I can climb again, all right? That's the regret. Now, if he had chosen to stay in his company and not start Amazon, now think about it. Think about it, right, my dear students out there. What do you think Jeff Bezos' regret would be if he had stayed in his company and not start Amazon? Anybody can share? What do you think his regret would be? Sorry? Not really another income. You will never know whether the startup will fail or succeed, right? If he had stayed in his job and not tried to start Amazon, it will be a lifelong regret. What would the regret be? The regret of never knowing whether you will succeed or fail. All right? And that lifelong regret, that regret that, you know, he's young at the point of time, right? And he's going to be with him for the next, 40, 50, 60 years, never knowing whether he will succeed or fail. It's a lifelong regret, isn't it? And when you break it down into that kind of framework, regret minimization, the choice becomes very clear.
Adrian, I need to interrupt a little bit. I think I can hear the energy that you have, that you actually use this energy minimization so that you have so many startup company that you have. Maybe you want to touch a little bit and share from your personal point of view, what have you done based on this mindset of regret minimization? Need to press a bit longer. Press longer.
Yeah, good question. So what have I done? And following this regret minimization, I've basically gotten myself into a shitload of trouble. And so the regret minimization for the millennials and the Generation Z down there, I think they call it YOLO, Y-O-L-O, right? It's basically you only live once, right? And that paradigm and that way of thinking is this, that, you know, you just got to try it, because if you don't try it, you won't know, right? And if you won't know, you will live to regret it, right? So when that happens, then for example, in my case, it just so happened when I follow this paradigm or follow this line of thought, then I'll be pursuing whatever ambition or whatever desire that comes to my mind, or whatever idea, whatever entrepreneurship that comes to my mind, I will pursue it, and I will try my very best to make it successful. And if it doesn't, then, you know, what I can do is I can learn from it. I learn why it didn't work, and then we move on from there. We pivot, and we become stronger, and we make it more successful the next round.
Yeah, I think you can share. Just now we had a chat a little bit earlier on about the building the startup, right? And you mentioned about the regret minimization. You were very successful in the corporate world, right? And then you get a high salary, and all of a sudden you just pop, you want to do a business. And by background, you're in economy, then you do business venture, then you are in F&B, then you are in, you know, totally kind of a different business mindset. Can you share with the audience the 3 venture they have done before, like it's like totally mind-blowing one?
Well, I don't know whether there's any mind-blowing ventures here. Again, as I was sharing with Prof. Yong earlier, right, that you know, of course, in over here in Malaysia, we have not done any startups or ventures that is of the scale of people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, right? But we were you know, a little bit fortunate to have built ventures that are multi-million-dollar companies now, and ventures that have won several awards, right? But maybe just share a little bit of what I call the entrepreneurship journey that we've gone through. In the early years, and again for the young students and young people here, the era that you're in is again perfect for startups. That's why today's topic, why startup is a good career choice for you, because the era you're in is the era of information, it's the era of technology, it's the era of social media, all right? and it's the era of data, and you can really use this to scale your business very, very quickly. Now, the era that we were in were very much more brick and mortar kind of
We are quite
businesses.
old already, right?
Yeah. So, like for example, my first few ventures were like F&B, a restaurant business, which I started and I grew to a chain of 6, 7 outlets, right? And we created a very strong brand in Johor, at least over those years, right? But then we realized that that it's very slow. One outlet after another outlet, as compared to today, you have the online business, e-commerce business, right? So we then think of how we can make it better, make it more scalable by leveraging on some kind of technology. All right, so that's where when you talk about maybe mind-blowing businesses, I wouldn't call it mind-blowing, but I would say, what can we do to infuse some kind of technology into an existing or traditional business to make it scale very fast? So one example, you asked for 3 examples, so maybe I give you the first example would be we work closely with a entrepreneur in Singapore, based in Singapore, where the family business was actually a plantation business. They do fruits and everything. So the second generation graduated from university thought that, hey, if I can do a concept of farm to table, right, direct from the farm to table. So we actually helped them to set up the whole system. It was an online e-commerce platform, B2B actually, so from farm to corporates and offices, right? And we built the whole business from ground stretch, from zero, all the way to, at its peak, I think it was almost about 400,000 Singapore dollars per month revenue, all right? So that was pretty good. I think that was done in about 1.5 to 2 years as well, pretty fast. Another example, and again, we are talking about how a kind of a traditional brick and mortar business can be transformed and become very scalable through the use of technology, right? So another example would be a company called Imagine AI, which we are venture building right now. So maybe I can just quickly scroll down the slides here. So these are some of the companies that we are venture building. All right, so another example is a company called Imagine AI. And Imagine AI is a very, very interesting startup because many businesses were very badly affected by the pandemic of the last 2.5 years. For example, the airline industry, the hospitality industry, tourism industry. But conversely, Imagine AI actually accelerated during the pandemic. It was incorporated on 15 December 2020, all right? Within 5 months, we brought it to its first funding at a valuation of 5 million ringgit. And from May 2021 to June 2022, we brought in sales revenue of almost 6 million ringgit, and we were very lucky to recently just close the second round of funding at approximately almost 14 million ringgit valuation, all right? So,
well, I mean, that's so exciting, right? I mean, like the company that mentioned, Imagine, they came to venture building, that you help them to build a business, with valuation and raise fund and so on. Then I believe that there's a lot of company want to look for you, right? So do you have any specific requirement for them, when you actually select the startup to work with?
Right, yeah. So thanks for the question. So over the Express Train, and if anytime you're free, please do Google us or follow our Facebook, and you can visit us anytime in EduCity over here. We have a very interesting office as well as an innovation laboratory. So anytime drop by, pitch to us your ideas, and we can see how we can work together. So over at the Express Train, we run 2 tracks, right? One is what we call pure outsource consultancy, whereby some of the business entrepreneurs come to us, they tell us what they want, then we give them a quotation, they pay us the money, we build it for them, right? But there's another track we run, which is the venture building track, where we actually partner with you. All right, you don't have to pay us anything, we do it for free, but in exchange for equity, we become a co-founder. So, but what we are coming in is we are coming in to complete the team. So for example, if the founder is maybe a tech background, we come in to complete the team in terms of business and marketing. If the founder is from a business background, maybe we come in to complete in terms of the tech side, right? Either way, there must be a synergy to be working together. So to answer your question, I think there are 3 very fundamental requirements for this partnership or this venture building is the first is the human to human element. It's really like dating, boyfriend, girlfriend, right? You got to get to know each other, go on a few dates, see whether we are compatible, see whether there's a synergy, and see whether we can work together for the long run, right? And through the many years of experience and different startups, we have had failed startups fundamentally because the founders start quarreling among each other because of differences in personality and differences in opinion. So the founders' synergy has to be quite compatible. That's the first criteria. The other two criteria for us in the Express Train is that over the many years of venture building, we kind of narrow down into projects that have a higher rate of success. Now, what I mean by higher rate of success is this. We got to identify a project. The project, right, needs to identify a particular pain point and have a solution for that pain point. As opposed to some startups and many founders who have an idea and they start building their idea, start building the product without doing the market validation, without actually finding out whether people want this product, right? Or whether there's a particular problem for this, right? So for us, we always look at the customer first, find out the pain point, and then build the solution for the customer. So that when we actually come up with a product, we immediately have the customer ready. And then when we have the first customer try, it may be a free, maybe the first customer, we're just trying it for free, but at least the customer, he or she, or the company, will validate your product for you, will be the testimony, and from there, you can sell it to other people, right? And that's where the build, launch, and grow is. Now, the third criteria is the grow part, whereby over the years, remember I mentioned that we used to have an F&B business and all that. So over the years, we find that we also maybe age is catching up, right? So our opportunity cost is getting higher, our commitments are getting higher. So over the years, we want to find startups that can grow quicker or more quickly, as opposed to taking 10 years to maybe open 6, 7, 8 restaurants. We take 10 years to grow for example, an e-commerce platform or online business internationally, right? The whatever startup or whatever idea, whatever pain point that you're trying to solve has to be, or can be duplicated in many different countries anywhere in the world, right?
Edwin, I think that really sum up what you have done for the team, and I'm sure that why they want to come to you, because you have 25 years of experience, different industry with a very solid team. Definitely you can, put that equation into a place. Maybe back into the audience, a very general question, right? I mean, they want to build their own startup now. Let's come back into the motto they have, build, launch, and grow. Go back to the build. What are the key things that they need to consider when they build? I think just now you mentioned a couple of things. Very important is a problem statement, the pain point. Second thing is actually the team itself. And the third one is actually, of course, the solution must be fit. So in your opinion, I mean, again, the advice as a general, if those, audience want to build a startup, what would be your advice to them?
Yeah, do a lot of hard work. At the beginning of your startup, most of us, we are what we call time rich and money poor, right? At the beginning of the startup, we don't have a lot of money, but maybe we have a lot of time. So what we do is we use time in exchange for money. We use time to do lots and lots of research. Do a lot of hard work in terms of desktop research, primary research, secondary research, find out exactly who your customers are, market validation, who your competitors are, what other companies, both locally in Malaysia and regionally in Southeast Asia and internationally all over the world, what are they doing, who is doing, for the similar kind of idea solution for this particular problem, right? So that's why just now I mentioned about identifying a problem statement and coming up with a solution. But, the world is quite big, right? There are many, many countries and many, many smart people in this world. We just reached 8 billion people. And I'm pretty sure that somewhere, someone might be doing a similar startup to yours, or they may already have 2, 3 years head start to you, right? But it doesn't matter, because what we can do is through the research, we can find out what they're doing well, what they're doing not so well, and we learn from that, and then we try to bring it over to your own region or your own country, right? So do lots and lots of research at the beginning. Make sure it is a very rigorous study on the market, the pain point, the possible solutions, your competitors, and competitors, not only the competitors that exist currently, but potentially future competitors who may come in, like startups like yours. So I think that would be the first advice to how to start, and how to start building, right? As in, I would say, don't build until you have done the research. Once you have done the research, talk to your customers, talk to their, understand their pain point, understand how they want the solution to be, then only you start building.
Yeah, I think you gave a very good point about the business itself. There's a certain element that need to be considered. Very important back again is a problem statement, whether the customer really wanted the pain point and so on. Now coming back into another question, again still building stage, is startup for everyone? And I think there's a saying that startup is not for everyone. And this particular entrepreneur need to have a certain attribute that very, very important. So maybe you can share a little bit, what are the key, let's say, 2 attributes that must have in a co-founder? Look at yourself. Why you keep on doing this, right? Between you and your peers, what made you as an entrepreneur compared to others of your peers?
Yeah. Well, there are kind of 2 questions that inbuilt into that, right? So, is startup for everyone? I'll answer that in a short while. And the other one is that, what are the attributes for a co-founder? Now, there are many people in the startup. Startup is really a team, right? At the beginning, it could be a lonely journey. But as you start getting some traction, you will have to start building a team, right? So right at the beginning, the founder, or maybe you have a few founders, the co-founders, right? The certain attributes is, number 1, you guys must have a dream, right? You guys must have a particular interest, a passion, a desire to do something. That's the first thing. But that passion is a fire that burns out very quickly, right? So what, bring us through that long periods and the long hours and the late nights is really that determination and the discipline to see your startup through. And one of the things that I would encourage all founders, or maybe I have to warn, either way, warn or encourage all founders, is that today, the startup environment and startup ecosystem is a bit over-glorified. Maybe because of people like Jeff and Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk, right? We read about them, we hear about their success stories, and we glorify them, or we curse and swear at them for whatever reason, right? Either way, they are in the news all the time, for good or for bad. And because of this, there's kind of a over-glorification of startup. I think, Dr. Yong, you are also a startup founder yourself, a very successful startup also. You will know that sometimes startup is all about just the grinding. It's really getting down, your hands dirty, the late nights, the long hours, and just lots and lots of hard work. It's not about sitting somewhere at Starbucks and suddenly become a multi-million-dollar business, right? It is really long hours of hard work, but it is very rewarding. And the long hours is actually flexible long hours, right? You decide your own time, your own target. So I guess that the characteristic of successful startup founders is you got to be very disciplined and very grounded, and try not to be distracted by the hype, the glitz, the glamour, and the glorification of startups. And we can see already there are a few successful startup founders that have failed and collapsed, right? Like for example, WeWork, right? Like for example, Uber, right? Where they started successful startups and built it successfully, but along the way they got lost in the hype and maybe the over exuberance and energy of the startup, right? So I think startup founders have to be very grounded. Now the second question, are startups for everyone? Not everybody will be a founder, but I would say that startups are for everyone. Because for a startup to grow and become successful, you really need to build a team, right? And today we have successful startups, like for example, Dr. Yong yourself, when you started, I think maybe 10 years ago, it's maybe just 1 person, right? And today, how many people do you have in your startup? 70 people, right? So you see, you have to build a team of people, isn't it? And in every startup, there will always be different roles for different people with different personalities. There will be some who will always be the front face of the startup, people who are extroverted, they like to talk, they like to come to seminars and presentations like that. But behind us, there are lots and lots of people who are very hardworking, very talented, who are the engine room behind the startups, right? They're doing all the work in terms of the project management, in terms of the accounts management, in terms of the technology development, all right? So I would say startup is for everyone, right? Because everyone has a role to play. And the important thing is to get everyone to believe in a particular vision and to row that boat in the same direction, in the same, in sync with each other. And that's what a startup has to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we hear a very important couple of points there. Number one, the grit, the determination are very important. When you fail, remember to stand back up. And the second is be grounded, be humble, go back, focus back to your business, what you're doing. I think these are all very, very important. I think pretty much we have covered the build stuff, the business side, the founder side. On the other side, once you have the team, you have a great idea, you have some MVP product. Now you want to launch it. Now there's a question, right? I need money, I need funding, I need bigger team, and so on and so forth. So what is your advice in Malaysia particularly to launch a product?
Okay, so it's interesting that in your question, I love this banter. And, I think we have done this a couple of times, right, between you and I. So either sometimes you're the moderator, sometimes you're the moderator. So there's a kind of good synergy between us. And picking out your words in Malaysia particularly, all right? So, and I think there's no better person to answer this question than one very successful startup in Malaysia, right? And the startup is called Grab. Have any one of you known of this company called Grab, right? Do you know where Grab is from originally? Don't know? A lot of people say it's a Singapore company. Actually, it's not. It's a Malaysian company, right? It started as MyTaxi, MY-Taxi, all right? And at the point of time, the founders who started this, actually they started this as a kind of a final year project, a project in their master's program in the university. And when they came back to Malaysia, when they wanted to commercialize, when they wanted to start it, both of them had other commitments, all right? So they hired someone called maybe employee number one, sorry. His name is called Aaron Gill. And of course, today we know Grab is a multi-billion-dollar company. So Aaron Gill gave an advice, I think there was one startup event or something, I cannot remember now, but many years ago, we had a chat and he said that a startup founder, right, to be successful, you need to make sure that you have three things. Number one is you got to make sure that you have a very clear vision of what you want to do. Like we said earlier about having identified problem statements, having a solution. So once you do that, identify a problem statement and you have a solution that you think can solve that problem statement that people will want, that's your vision already, right? And then of course your vision moves on to, okay, I'm going to do this in Malaysia, I'm going to scale this internationally, blah, 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 right? That's your vision. So number one is have a very clear vision. And number two is to try to hire the best that you can at that point of time of your company. So what do you mean by at the point of time of your company is that when you first start your company, you don't have money. There's no way you're going to pay 10,000, 20,000 for a CFO, right? So how do you convince talented people to join you? Your vision, right? So that's why you must have a very strong vision. And number two is you have to try to hire the best you can at the point of the company. But like what your question is, after that, when you start getting some traction and then you try getting sales, but at the beginning, you're actually losing money. You're burning money, right? So you don't have enough money to sustain yourself. So how do you sustain it? Like, for example, the vision, I said just now, the fire, it only burns for a while. The flame will burn very brightly for a while. After that, it fizzles out. How do you keep that passion going? Because after a while, startup people get hungry. 1 year, 2 years, they get demoralized. They need to buy baby milk powder for their babies and that kind of thing. So the third thing that Aaron Gill said, remember, the first thing is have a very clear vision. The second thing is make sure that you always hire the best that you can at the point of time of your company. And the third thing is make sure you always have money in the bank, right? So, and it does make sense because it's actually very deep, right? Because it's a circular ecosystem there. First, you start with your vision. Then from the vision, you manage to convince some fools to join you, right, on your journey, and to believe in you and have the vision together. But after a while, people get demoralized. But that's where you really have to hustle to find money. Either by convincing investors to invest in you, or by selling your product. And actually, the either or is the same thing. Why? Because investors invest in you only if you have a product that you can sell. Get it? Right? So that's very important, right? You have to make sure that your venture works. You make sure that you can sell, and you make sure you can get investment. Now, so what I mean just now, earlier we talked about market research and all that. Before you even start building, you do all this market research. And then what we do, we always talk about MVP, right? So what exactly it is? It's a minimum viable product. That means in our venture building, we limit it to like maximum 3 months, 1 to 3 months. You must quickly come up with your MVP. Because more than that, people get hungry. 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, people are hungry already, right? People get demoralized already. So within 3 months, you launch your MVP. We call it lean startup methodology. You launch it very quickly, you test it on the market, right? Build, measure, learn, right? So you test it out very quickly, then you learn the feedback. Then from there, you pivot. If it's successful, then you continue growing. If it's not successful, you learn. Why is it not successful? Then you pivot, change, improve, then launch again, right? So build, measure, learn, right? Launch and relaunch until you get a product that is successful that people want to buy. And once people want to buy, you got money, and people will invest.
No, I think there's a very good message out there when we talk about this launching. A lot of startup wannabe, they will think that money is a key thing. The first thing is about money, right? But you say totally different. The number is about the vision. Vision back again is how to solve the world problem to provide a solution. And the second is about the team, hire the best talent. And the last one is actually the money. So I think this is a very, very good tip for everyone who want to venture to startup. I mean, money is not everything. Very important is you have the vision, then you have the team doing that, money will come later.
Exactly. So like for example in the Express Train, sometimes we do run boot camps, or like recently there's Idea Kita program and all that. So some startups come and we organize mini competition with them, and for the interesting ideas, interesting startups, we actually give them a small prize, and they come, we incubate them for 3 months. 3 months, maximum 6 months, nothing more than that. And the small price is always a very small amount of money, maybe 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, that kind of thing. Just enough for you, for the startups, right, to get the MVP out, right? And be very disciplined, come up with an MVP to do, to test it out. And from there, if your MVP works, then you will get the traction. And once you get traction, you should be able to get the fundraising yourself, right? So we don't want to give too much money because, like you said, too much money makes people distracted. Then you become lost in the glitz and glamour of the startup. We want to give people just enough for you to get your hands dirty and to start your startup.
Yeah, I think we have about 10 more minutes. So, audience, if you have any question, you can just write your question on the chat box. And later, the organizer will pass me the question. I'll ask the question directly. So I think back into the third point, right? Build, launch, and grow. I mean, first build, you have the team, you have an idea. Then launch, you have the vision, you have the team. Then, of course, money come along. Finally, you have a business already. Grow is a very important point. What's your thought about that? Is it important for a company to keep on growing, or just stagnant at one place?
No. Definitely your company cannot be stagnant in one place. And again, going back to Aaron Gill's words, like, listen to the words very clearly, because it's quite actually meaningful and quite deep. He was saying that a startup should always try to hire the best that they can have at that point of time of the company. Which means that at different point of time of a company, your company goes into different stages. And when your company goes into different stages, you require a different kind of best, right? A different kind of talent, right? So, for example, again, just now, Dr. Yong and I we were chatting a little bit about Dr. Yong's company, DF Automation. And of course, it's been 10 years of hard work. No, nothing comes easy. It was really long, hard work, sleepless nights. No, it's the other way around. I'm the moderator. So, and Dr. Yong was sharing with us that now they are preparing for their next stage, which, if all goes well, they plan for public listing, right? Public listing, congratulations, right? And they are hitting all their revenues, and they are going positive and all, right? So, to prepare for the next stage, Dr. Yong is also looking at hiring top talents. We're talking about C-executive positions, people with 10, 20 years of running big companies, MNC companies, to join Dr. Yong's startup, right? Now, of course, for these people to give up their wonderful jobs, a CEO of a company, a CFO of a company, CFO of an MNC company, right? To join your startup, you got to attract them with a really good package, right? So I think at different stage of your startup, whether you're at ideation stage, pre-seed, or Series A, that kind of thing. So you will have to try to identify the talents and try to find the best and most suitable people at that point of time of your company, at that stage of your company. And for example, like Dr. Yong, the reason why he's looking to hire experienced people at a C level is because the company has grown to a size, and there's the growth part, like build, launch, and grow, right? At the beginning, your ideation start, you build your idea. Then after that, you launch your idea, you test it out. If it works, you grow it. If it doesn't work, you try again, right? And after you grow it, grow it from 1 customer, 10 customers, 10 customers to 100 customers, right? You will come to a point where you will have so many customers, so many projects, and so many people where you need really experienced C-level executives, right? C-level people to come in to put in strong management control to stabilize your company, right?
Yeah, indeed. So I think Erwin have wrapped up most of the thing about the growth of the business. It's kind of I try not to use a must, but we always say the change is constant, right?
Yeah,
If you
yeah.
don't grow, it's kind of a stagnant. Sometimes your company can grow. In fact, talent will not come to you. So I still remember for my company, every 2 years we plan to move to a bigger place. So the first office was like 500 square feet, then 1,000, 2,000, 4,000, 8,000. So when you have that kind of plan every 2 years, the talent are quite excited. Then they will be looking for what's next 2 years. So I think that's a good thing to motivate, but at the same time also it's good for the business. Yeah, I think my couple of more question. So one of the questions that I think a lot of people want to know also before they face it, what are the biggest challenge that you have when you run the startup? The bigger challenge that you think that they might have?
Biggest challenge, I would say, I think for startups, much of the reason, the bulk of the reason for startup failures or startup collapsing is really about the human element and human factor of the team and the founders, right? Like we said earlier, startup is about getting your hands dirty. It's about grinding it out. It's about the long hours. And sometimes when people go through that process, there's tension, there's stress, right? There's pressure. And when that happens, people get irritated, people get angry, people snap. So sometime along the way, either people get demoralized or people come into conflict with each other. So I've seen startups collapsing because the founders start quarreling with each other. There are differences in opinion, right? It's the same like any other relationship, boyfriend, girlfriend, that kind of thing, right? So at the beginning, first 1 or 2 dates, everything is so nice. All love in your eyes, right? But after, 1 year, 2 years, or after living together, you feel a lot of stress. You feel a lot of, you're unhappy about these things and that things, small little things irritate you. So I think startup challenge is really about overcoming and navigating that human relationships, not only among the founders, but among your team, and also with your stakeholders. Balancing that relationship with your stakeholders, like your investors, like your customers. So again, famous examples of startups that grew phenomenally, became very successful, and suddenly imploded. One of the main reasons is because they didn't manage the relationship with their stakeholders well, and their investors and stakeholders lost confidence in them. Famous example, WeWork, right? Another famous example, Uber, right?
Yeah, wonderful. I think again, I think a lot of startup wannabe think that one of the bigger challenge will be about money, about the idea, but not so much. It's all about team, about people. When the market changes, as long as the team can change and resilient, they can change. Money will come along, right? Yeah, I have a couple of questions here from the audience. So first one to Mr. Speaker. As we know you own a startup company, can you share your startup journey and success story, which can inspire a new startup company? I think you shared that a little bit already. Maybe you can share about the manufacturer that you mentioned from the Vietnam one. That could be quite interesting from a...
I think, okay, earlier we did share a success, kind of a success in Imagineer in terms of revenue success and funding success, right? So today, of course, Imagineer is doing very well because we have millions of ringgit in terms of revenue and in terms of valuation in just 2 years. But let me share another example, a very interesting example of a startup that almost failed. And the example I want to share with you is the example of how you pivot, how you change, how you be resilient. Now, the startup here is called Nanobar over here. And Nanobar was actually started almost towards the end of 2019. Of course, on hindsight, everybody knows it's just before the pandemic. Right? COVID-19, right? It's COVID-19 for a reason, 2019, right? And Nanobar was in the worst possible industry that was hit by the pandemic. Nanobar is an idea that the founder of this idea envisioned an idea to solve that problem of the hotel minibar fridge. Now, from the Express Train point of view, this was a perfect startup because it clearly identified a problem, it provided a solution for it, and it's very scalable, meaning it can be used in any hotels anywhere in the world. Now, the problem it looked at is the hotel minibar fridge. Any of you have traveled before, you stay in a hotel before, inside the hotel, you have the fridge, right? And if you actually ask the hotel owners or the hotel management, why is there a fridge? Because we sell drinks. Yeah, but does anybody buy drinks? No. Why do you still have it? Oh, because other hotels also have it. So the hotel minibar fridge, it takes up space, it consumes electricity, it doesn't sell anything. And if you're like me, who go for holiday, I will buy my drinks from 7-Eleven downstairs, take out the hotel drinks and put my drinks inside to get the cooling, the refrigeration. All right, so the idea of Nanobar is to invent a kind of IoT locker box. Similar shape and size to the bar fridge, but instead of selling drinks, it dispenses a travel essential. For example, your travel adapter when you go to a foreign country, your charger, umbrella, raincoat, that kind of thing, sunblock, right? A need as opposed to a want, all right? And, and in the intimacy of a room, and let's say you go to a foreign country, you've got to bring a charger, and there you have a charger in that locker box. You just scan the QR code, make the payment, it unlocks, and you get your charger, right? So to me, it was a brilliant idea. To us, it was a brilliant idea. Unfortunately, on hindsight, it was hit by the pandemic of 2020, right? And border closure, hotels, no business. Nobody will stay in a hotel. But the entrepreneur very quickly pivoted the concept of the IoT box in the hotel room, inside the hotel room. Instead of putting inside the hotel room, during the pandemic, we put it in office pantry. And co-working spaces in KL, we have like commune and all that, right? So we started selling things in the office. Now, along the way, of course, we got people buying those things. Like we put in things, not only your charger, but also things like Snickers bar and all that. Like when you work and you feel a little bit hungry, you want a snack, you go and buy, right? But along the way, and that's where entrepreneurship is so exciting and, it's full of new innovative ideas. Someone from an advertising company came across our Nanobar and looked at it and said, hey, could we use Nanobar to give free samples, right? Then I was thinking, what do you mean free samples? Now, all the while we were using Nanobar to sell things, right? Sell your charger, sell your travel adapter, sell Snickers bar. No, so this advertising company said, look, every time we do product sampling or we want to introduce a product, we have to go to the supermarket, for example, Aeon, and then we rent the booth, and then we have to set up one booth, we manufacture one booth, then we have to hire people to give out samples, right? All this costs money. If you use your Nanobar, you scan the QR code, you fill in the survey form, pop, the thing open, you get a free sample, right? And guess what? The sales from the free sample, what do you mean by sales from the free sample? I'll tell you later, right? The sales from the revenue from the free sample actually more than the revenue from selling the product itself, right? Now, what do you mean by sales from the free sample is we as in Nanobar, our company, get paid for every survey that people fill out. Because why? Malaysians love free things, right?
Wonderful. I think I hear three things here. Number one, of course, some of the success rate you managed to get is you get a 5 million valuation, one of the company. Then you get 6 million revenue within a very short time. You did do that, wonderful. And I think the last one was very, very important for all the startup, pivot. Pivot, and pivot. And also that is an element of innovation, creative, and think out of the box. From just selling, like a vending machine, all of a sudden, give free sample. That's wonderful, man.
And again, along the way, you start up as a lonely journey, right? But as you do it, and that's where it becomes very fulfilling. As you start your startup, at the beginning it's lonely, but you realize that you meet a lot of people, either your teammates, but people from the general public, your customers, your vendors, your stakeholders, right? And like I said in the example of Nanobar, suddenly you meet someone, and this was something we never thought of. We honestly, we are not so brilliant, we are not so smart. We never thought of this idea of doing the product sampling, right? But the advertising company, the experts and the professionals in the industry who do that advertising and the product sampling business, they came to us and told us about this idea, right? So that's why startup is really, really interesting, and it's a career of your choice. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, we only have like 3 minutes for 3 more questions, so let's try to speed it up. The second question is for startup company affected by pandemic and economic downfall, what are the immediate priorities for their recovery?
I think we kind of answered it in the few examples that we gave earlier about Nanobar and also Imagine AI. So there are some companies that actually accelerated, they even do better during the pandemic or during economic crisis. So for example, during the pandemic, people find it very difficult to hire human labor because you can't get the foreign workers, people cannot travel, so on and so forth, right? So they cannot cross border, right? So that's why companies have no choice but to move into automation, into robotics, and that's why Imagine AI did very well, all right? And the thing about Nanobar is so happen to be industry, tourism, hotel, hospitality, that is right smack hit very badly by the pandemic, right? So that's where then they pivot into kind of a different industry.
So I think back into the point that when there's a challenge, the bigger the challenge, you open up a new opportunity,
yes,
right?
It opens up a new opportunity. And also, during the challenge or during a pandemic or even during a economic recession, it gives you an opportunity to consolidate, to downsize, to refocus, and then become better, all right?
Yeah, I get another more question. So this is another one. From your point of view, how to gain customer trust for the startup business? I mean, just start up, right? How do you get your first sales from your customer?
Yeah, I mean, even if you do it free, right? So like we mentioned earlier, right at the beginning, before you even build a product, you got to identify the pain point. You got to find the customer first. Find the customer, ask them what is their pain point, ask them what solution they want, and then build that solution for them. So that's how you get the trust, because you are building it for them. Now, if you're lucky, the customer will want to pay you for it. But if not, you just do it for free, right? And that customer will validate you. That means he say that, wow, this is really good product. And if he finds it's good, he will be willing to pay for it. He or she will be willing to pay for it, right? So that's how you start. When your first customer, you must always get the confidence of the customer by working with the customer to build a product for them. Yeah.
Yep, wonderful. I think from DF Automation itself, robot to industry, right? Sometimes we have to really show the relationship, our sincerity, then the customer will come back to you.
Yeah.
So I have a very, very interesting question here, Edwin. I have a stable job with income more than 20,000 per month. I also have a passion to start the business, but I don't have a courage to quit the job. I know it needs sacrifice, but what are the checklists I should look at before I decided to quit job? And is it a good idea to start a business while maintaining the current job?
Anonymous?
Anonymous.
All right, Miss or Mr. Anonymous, I'm not sure your 20,000 is in what currency, but if you're in Malaysia and in ringgit, I would guess, I mean, 20,000 is really impressive, and congratulations on your good job and your high-paying job. You must be doing really well. But I think that unless you're not in Malaysia, the 20,000 ringgit may be a little bit less than what Jeff Bezos was earning in the peak of his career when he quit his job. All right. So again, I think the fundamentals go back to that regret minimization. The fact that you are able to get this job that is paying so well is a really testament to your ability, your qualifications, for example. All right. And that's why your company, your boss trusts you with this. And with that, you already have that confidence to come back to the corporate, the corporate environment, or come back to a career if and when you decide to. Which means that if you decide to quit your job now and start your startup, and along the way, 2 years, 3 years later, for whatever reason, you find that startup is not for you or entrepreneurship is not for you, you can easily come back to the corporate environment because you have already proven successfully there. Yeah.
Yep. I think there's many ways to look into this. Number one, what Edwin said, that you can just, resign, move on, start a business, because that back to the point that regret minimalization, right? I think I can hear the regret sound a lot during the conversation. But the other thing that you could try to do is because you have 20,000 salary, you can take out 5,000. Just invest in a startup and try to build a team around that. You do part-time for a year. If things work well, then you decide to leave. Could be one way as well. But of course, when you do that, you may not able to focus the business itself. So it really depends on your current job and also what business that you want to do.
Correct. No, that's also a good idea. So we do have a lot of people who are working and in a corporate environment, and they freelance outside. You know, they do their part-time outside, and then they build it slowly. It takes a longer time and not focused, but they build it slowly and come to a point where they feel ready and confident to quit their job and go into it full-time.
Yep, indeed. Okay, Edwin, I think we are almost at the end of the time. So maybe do you have one advice to all the audience today regarding to this startup?
Young students and young graduates out there, I mean, the favorite catchword of your generation is YOLO, right? You only live once. So I think today we started off with the regret minimization framework. And I do encourage all of you all to Google that video. It's a very nice video of a very young Jeff Bezos. If I'm not wrong, I remember that video, he still had hair. If I'm not wrong. But it's really interesting. And you could also hear the energy and enthusiasm in his voice as well, right? So Google the video. It's a very interesting video. And the word of advice is, if you have an idea and a burning desire, take the leap of faith, right? Because, well, what's the worst case scenario? The worst case scenario is you would have learned, invaluable experiences along the way over the next few months, 6 months, 1 year. And if you succeed, well done. If you don't, that experience that you have gained over that 1 year would be invaluable in your next venture or also in your future employment opportunities, right? So another way is that, we also employers, right? As startup companies, we also employ people. And to be very honest, sometimes I'm actually more interested of what else is in their resume other than their academic qualification and work experience. Like what else they have done, some of them have done online shops, some of them have tracked Kathmandu, that kind of thing, right? So those are the things that interest me, right, as an employer.
Okay, thank you very much, Edwin. I think I learned a lot today, and I'm sure that the audience today learned quite a bit, and hopefully they will start their own startup very, very soon. So once again, thank you to EduCity for today's session.
Actually, there's one more question.
Oh, there's one more question. Yeah. Okay, hold on, there's one more question. Okay, there's a name here, Jason here, and thank you very much for wonderful sharing. In terms of business expansion, external investment might be one of the best options. However, stock ownership and undesirable interference might be the blocking factor. As such, any kind of idea to tackle such type issue? Equity investment.
Yeah. Again, we talk all about human relationships just now. So human relationships is not just about your team, your founders, but also the stakeholders and investors. And it's really all about getting to know each other really well. Your investors as well. There's a process of dating each other, getting to know each other. A lot of startups, they feel very intimidated by investors and VCs because they always feel that, I need their money, right? So the power balance is a little bit skewed to one side. But look, it's the other way around. If your startup is really good and really promising, you are the one who decide which investor you want. It's not the investor decide which startup they want to invest in, right? You want to put yourself in a position where your startup is become a magnet for investors. The investors come to you, right? You don't go around begging for investors. So the thing is this: always build your company and your startup and your vision to first and foremost to make it a successful product. Investors will come, and when it becomes a magnet to investors, you get the luxury to pick and choose your investors, which means pick and choose terms that is comfortable to you, and pick and choose investors that are synergistic with you. We call it smart money. You got to pick investors that will not only contribute money to you, but contribute their network and their experience and so on and so forth to you. And the other factor is also, like you said, the liquidation of the company. you know, in younger days, I have friends, especially when they were very young and very tight with money, very hard up for money. I used to know a friend who sold, I think 50% of his company for 100,000 or 150,000. And then he worked very hard, and the other partner who put in the money was a sleeping investor, right? Now, what do you think will happen after 2 to 3 years as the business grow? You know, 100,000 become 500,000, 500,000, 1 million. But every time you make money, 50% is gone, right? To a sleeping investor who doesn't do work, right? He just put in 100,000 at the beginning. So obviously, it was a mutually agreed term at the beginning, but after a while, you kind of lose morale and motivation because you're doing a lot of work, but only getting half the salary.
Yeah, wonderful point. I think, like you say, is win-win situation for all parties. I think from my side, I have close to 200 shareholders actually. So from angel investor, from equity fund, from VC, I think everyone bring different value to the company lah. And of course, you need to accept them what value they bring in, and also some of the noise that they could have. Yep. So I think we have to conclude the session today. Once again, thank you very much to Edwin, and also thanks to all the audience who attended this session today. I pass back to you, Hakim.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Young and Mr. Edwin. So thank you for the insightful session, Mr. Edwin and Mr. Young. That was a very good discussion. I want to thank everyone here for being with us today, and I'm sure the participants have gained valuable knowledge from our session today. Do not worry about those who might miss this session. We will upload them on our YouTube channel. So thank you again, Mr. Edwin and Dr. Young. A quick info sharing on our upcoming events. Keep an eye out for our upcoming events in December at Tunku Mahkota Ismail Youth Centre, the MIYC, groundbreaking ceremony at EDCity Sports Complex. There are many exciting events waiting for you there, such as Hap Hap Hooray, Sarong Fusion, and Sarong Fusion. Let's join us at EDCity Sports Complex on 4th December 2022. Stay tuned on EDCity official social media as the event details will be uploaded soon. Do not turn off your notification for upcoming events by EDCity. And before we end, I am Amirul Hakim bin Azlan. Till then, we meet again. Take care, stay safe, and we will see you at our next event. Thank you so much.
You make it, run.